I can take the notes if nobody else wants to do it.
Awesome. Thank you.
He didn't give us like a template for this one, right?
I don't think so. It won't let me open up other tabs. I don't think so. I was a little confused about like exactly like how much detail we were supposed to go into when we were like writing down what we saw.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I felt like these instructions for this assignment were pretty vague.
Yeah.
Was I the only one that like, even as I was like watching the thing, I was like, I'm not really sure what I'm supposed to be noting here, but
Yeah, I feel like I missed a lot of things just because I wasn't exactly, because at first I thought I was supposed to be like what they were doing well, like communicating well or like things like that. But then I was like, it just says like what you're seeing in general. So I was like, I don't know. I just wrote down a couple things.
okay. All right. I'm pulling up the instructions. Right, so it says take turns talking about what we identified. Does anybody want to start? I feel like everybody's feeling kind of unsure.
We can't hear you, Mackenzie.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. So I don't know. Are we supposed to like with I have the document pulled up that was attached with the video, and are we supposed to like point out the things that we saw that was demonstrated in the simulation, and then
I think so. Like,
okay.
I almost felt like it was the topic that like the therapist like had them discuss, like talking about how like the son felt like his parents didn't care about him,
Right.
that sort of thing. But
Yeah.
again, the instructions weren't super clear.
Got it. Because I don't know if we want to like go through the document to like point out the things that we found, like do you know what I mean? Like the different principles.
Yeah.
That are done.
Yeah, that's kind of what I like took a little bit of notes on. So
Okay.
I think that might
When
be
you guys say, sorry, go ahead. When you guys say document, are you talking about the like chapter 6 that it said? Okay,
Yeah.
Just make sure.
Yeah. Which was super interesting. I thought that was really, really. Sometimes when I read things that are, like, not like research, but like kind of, like those research-based, study-based, like things that they do on families or children. Sometimes I have a hard time following because sometimes it doesn't really make sense. But I felt like this one was really self-explain. Like it was really good to explain like the different aspects of like within, I don't know. So it was easier for me to understand. But
Yeah.
I guess I could go first and just point out something from the first section.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, so in the making meaning of adversity, I don't know if I did this right. So I highlighted the sentence, by normalizing and contextualizing distress, family members enlarge their perspective to see their difficulties as understandable in light of our adverse situation. And so this is something that I highlighted right off the bat, that one of the first things that I noticed, how the therapist would go through and just kind of talk about what was going on. He wasn't trying to make judgments, tell them, what was like he wanted to know what was happening. That's all he was trying to do. So I think that's what that was saying.
No, that makes sense. Yeah, I guess I just didn't think about it in that way, like that sentence not being like about how the therapist helped to guide the conversation, but I really like that.
Mm.
Does anyone else have a thought from that first section?
Yes. So I kind of saw like talking about the sense of coherence, viewing the crisis as a shared challenge. Just like how even though the dad wasn't as worried as the mom was, he still felt that anxiety about like what his son was up to, and then as well as like the sister feeling the same way, and throughout the conversation, the son was able to see a little bit about like how his choices had impacted like his family, and kind of how he had caused them a little bit of anxiety.
That dad drove me crazy. Like, this is jumping ahead, but I really got upset when the therapist was like, look right at your son and tell him how you feel. And he was like, it makes your mom upset. And I was like, that's not your feelings. But I feel like that's so like the therapist was saying at the end, like that's a man thing to not really be able to express their feelings. But like, even when he was directly told, tell him how you feel, he told him your mom feels. And I feel like they weren't really working together as a team, the mom and dad, because the dad was kind of just putting everything on the mom.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I kind of like what you brought up, and also the therapist brought up, of like how men tend to internalize their feelings. That's how my dad is. Like he's definitely like more open under certain circumstances. But yeah, so I kind of, it didn't really, I can't say it didn't bother me, but it didn't surprise me when the dad did that. Just because it just, I guess I'm so used to my dad being like, this is like what your mom feels, or like this is how your actions have impacted your brother or something, not kind of not like making it personal to him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Let's see. I think that's all I had for the first part. I know the therapist kind of vaguely talked a little bit about like spirituality, but I didn't feel like it was enough to really say that it really impacted things much.
Yeah, I feel like spirituality wasn't really addressed a whole lot, other than this therapist kind of brought it up and then kind of just glazed over it and then moved on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I feel like, oh, sorry.
No, you're good, Hannah. Go ahead.
Okay. So I feel like when he talked about spirituality, it was in relation to a positive outlook. Like he kind of mixed the two. He focused more on the positive outlook, but he just, when he brought in the spirituality, he was saying, kind of giving the message that mom and dad, you can fix this. You can still have a good relationship with your son. Like you can still have, like it's within your power to bring your family back together. I feel like that's what he was saying. So in my mind, he kind of mixed the two.
I like that.
Yeah. There was a part where I think it's in like you're saying, they're really mixed, the both of them, but in the positive outlook, it's towards the very end. It's like in the last, sorry, my husband's watching basketball. It's the last paragraph. Oh, let me find it. It says, oh, when immediate problems are overwhelming or larger social conditions are daunting, family members can be encouraged to start with aspects they can do something about instead of feeling trapped or helpless. And I feel like the therapist did a really good job of figuring out and trying to kind of introduce a plan for them to start to figure out how they could use different tactics to be able to help him to feel supported. And kind of, I mean, this might come up later, as we talk about it, but I feel like he did a really good job of trying to recognize Jimmy for the things that, the feelings, like legitimate feelings that he does feel, because they're only seeing something that they assume on the outside that is, there's no information that they really know about. And so he probably feels really overwhelmed by their feeling overwhelmed, and it just like doesn't really help. And so I love that, how it says like they can feel encouraged when there's something that they can do, there's something that they can control, and whether that is Jimmy, telling his family, communicating, or if they're like, hey, we want to do this together, and then building that relationship so that he feels like it's a safe place for him to communicate with his family. So
I'm having a really hard time like writing things and looking at the same time.
So mine is kind of all over the place. Like I didn't do it in super great order of like the different sections. I just like when something was brought up, I just like wrote it down. So I'm trying to figure out in order which one I took notes on. So for like flexibility, in a way, I kind of saw, I think Carly brought this up, like the parents kind of weren't on the same page. But at the same time, like I still saw like that the dad had a lot of respect for the mom and like how the mom was feeling, and how they wanted to work together to like help Jimmy. They just hadn't gotten there yet. And so when the therapist was like, you two need to like go out and figure out how to work together to like help, I thought that was a really good idea, because I feel like it's really easy for parents or just like couples in general to think that they're on the same page and they're really not. And so when a crisis comes up, like being worried about their son, you see that you thought that you both were worried, and it turns out the mom is a lot more worried than the dad is, and for completely different reasons.
I also had a thought with flexibility, but it was related to the daughter. It was towards the end of the video when they were talking about how, she started off by saying that her brother has changed, he's different, he's acting different. And then at the end, she said, I think I recognize now that I still know him. He's still my brother, even though he is different. And I think that was a good example of flexibility, changing under the circumstances, but moving ahead. Like it's okay to change.
Really like that. I also put on flexibility. I felt like the family wasn't super flexible of understanding that Jimmy's in like a major, like a phase in his life where he's going to change and he's going to have different things going on. And like everybody after they graduate from high school has to like refine their place. And they kind of were just like, he's changing, he's not around anymore. They just wanted him to keep doing the same things he was doing before, and they weren't really letting him grow up.
Mhm. Yeah. I feel like I kind of felt like Jimmy once or twice in that video, just because I've had personal experience with that kind of same instance where I was before my mission and I was out really late, and my dad actually ended up, like, I was driving home and I was like trying to hurry home, and like I hadn't been answering my phone because I didn't like want to like talk on the phone while I was driving, so I was just like trying to hurry. And I remember as I was like pulling into like the neighborhood, I saw my dad's car like pass me, and I was like, oh shoot. And so then I came inside and my dad came in and he was like, oh my gosh, like what's going on? Like he was just more worried than like angry. But then after that, he said, well, he set the expectation, like, I know that you're 18, 19, you gotta kind of have to be responsible. And it wasn't in a way that was like making me feel like I was less than. He understood because, he went through that as a kid too. But I feel like he did a really good job. And I think that of this right here, and then I'll explain a little bit more. But in the flexible section, it says in highly stressful conditions, it is most important to provide nurturance, protection, and guidance for children and other vulnerable family members. And so I feel like the therapist also did a really good job of being able to kind of point out the things or try to get a good idea of how each family member reacts to certain situations, especially in a stressful situation like with the mom. And even the dad said that. He's like, she kind of goes crazy. And she admitted it. She's like, yeah, I do. But kind of like you were saying, Hannah, like how it's like, maybe at the beginning of the session, they didn't really feel like, they were kind of just there because it's like, oh, Jimmy's fault, why they're, being torn apart. But towards the end, they were able to, as he was able to kind of digest and kind of get to the root of, what is everyone feeling and how do you respond in situations, they were able to understand others more and being able to kind of unravel, what is, why are we feeling this way? Oh, because we care. And, what can we do better going forward type of thing. So.
Yeah, I really like that. Yeah. Yeah, I definitely think like the therapist was really good at like helping the family to problem solve and to like kind of, like you said, like see their own roles in the problem. And I'm not really sure exactly what that would fit into. But just maybe going back to like a sense of cohesion, not only like this is affecting us all, but like that none of us can really cast stones because we're all contributing, like either through not communicating well or overreacting or not what was the other thing I was gonna say? Not being willing to like problem solve. So yeah. Let's see. Yeah, and kind of to go along with that of underconnectedness, I didn't feel like the family was really good at respecting each other's differences, that they're going to react to certain things in different ways, or like you said about how Jimmy's going through this transition period, that they weren't fully open until towards the end of he has this different perspective on life than we do, and we need to respect that. We need to work with him and recognize that just because we were teenagers once or young adults once, that doesn't mean we know exactly like what he's doing and why.
Yeah, I had a very similar thought. Mine was just about how the members in the family were disengaged and they couldn't really rely on each other. They were all trying to force the situation to what they wanted to be in their own way without actually communicating what they were thinking, what they were feeling at the time. And so, yeah, it's basically what you said, Madison. I also put that down.
I really liked how towards the end, in order for the both siblings and the parents to feel connected, he started kind of small, the therapist. He was able to have, the mom and the dad, and, made the dad ask, and it was like specific. It was like a date. And then same thing for like the kids too. And I think it's in here, it kind of talks about it, but I feel like it's super important to be able to, like I said, there's not a lot that can get accomplished within a family or even just within a relationship within the family, whether that's, parents to child or parent to parent or sibling to sibling or anything like that, without that relationship that's being built there. And they're not going to feel like they can share what they want to share. They're not going to feel like they can even share their feelings, because if I do this thing, oh no, like mom and dad are going to get mad at me, I'm going to withdraw. And because I know that in the past they've done this and they don't allow me to feel or allow me to express, oh, well, this thing happened. Oh, well, because you did this, automatically you're a bad kid. That's not the case at all, So being able to have that connection through experiences and taking the time to do that will really help the child or the parent, vice versa, to feel like, the other person cares, and that they're going to take the time to be able to know, okay, I know that this isn't really who Jimmy is, or I don't know, this isn't really how mom is, but I know, and they can kind of cut them some slack because they know their personality through experiences, if that makes sense.
Mhm. On that same kind of line, I had written down, where was that? I think it was under like social or belief systems. It wasn't so much like religious belief systems, but on their like socio-culture, that they said, he's hanging out on the wrong side of the tracks and he's hanging out with the bad kids. And that was kind of their own projection of, I'm sure there's lots of good kids hanging out at this skate park. And that's like a valid hobby, but in their mind, because it was on the wrong side of town, he was doing something bad.
Yeah. I definitely got the vibe of like, even the sister who like he went to school with these kids, and even though she had heard some stuff about them, that they were using drugs and drinking and all that, that she didn't take the time to really see how they interacted with people on the day-to-day, because even if those things were true, that doesn't make them bad people. That just makes them people who aren't making the best decisions.
Thank you.
Yeah, I also put that down. So yeah.
Okay, so there's this part in under the communication and problem solving processes. And I'm sorry if this is like I don't think we need to go like down the line. I'm just going down the line because that's just what I'm seeing. So if it's like not in line with what we were talking about, I apologize. But there's a part in here where it just kind of reiterates what we've been talking about, but it talks about clear information, and it talks about how ambiguity. I'm not the best at pronouncing things. And uncertainty fuel anxiety, like with the mom, she didn't know, or the parents or whatever. I feel like, in a side note, kind of like how you're feeling, Carly, I kind of felt annoyed that the dad was like, yeah, I don't really care that much. I'm like, oh, okay, like, I'm like, okay, then do you care or do you not? Like, are you worried or you're not? Because you can't
Yeah.
say, anyways, um, and block understanding of what is happening and what can be done. Well-intentioned family members may avoid painful or threatening information, wishing to protect each other from worry, which, maybe Jimmy was doing that. Shared acknowledgement of the truth of a painful experience fosters recovery, whereas denial, secrecy, or cover up can impede adaptation. Anxieties about the unspeakable can generate catastrophic fears and are often expressed in somatic and behavioral problems, especially in children. And so I feel like with the, like we were talking about, like with the lack of information and then the lack of communication between everybody, I think that it leaves room for assumptions like we've been talking about. And it's kind of interesting because it's like, it's a cycle, but no one within the family is like willing to like act or like initiate really anything. Like they're willing to like speak up and say, hey, like you're not doing this right or whatever. But no one's really being willing to take the time to say, okay, like why is this happening? Like, oh, you're just that kid because his sister. Well, I know who you hang out with, so they're not good. Or dad. Well, I don't really care, but your mom cares, so I feel like I have to care. So son, you need to be better or whatever. But it's not like, why are you doing this? Why are you coming home late? Why, what's the reason for that? Or getting to know, hey, what are your friends like? You should really have them over, making them feel like, it's a, like I keep saying, it's a place where they can bring their friends over or whatever, but no one really takes it. Just doesn't seem like they were really taking the initiative to be able to make things easier for Jimmy to communicate with them. So
Yeah, kind of along those lines, when they were talking about like how Jimmy wasn't open about like how he was feeling, how he felt like his parents didn't care, or he felt like he wasn't accepted, because he kind of like shut down. His mom and his sister just kind of took that as like he doesn't care about like the fact that we're worried, or he doesn't care about what happens to himself, or and then Jimmy took their albeit their poorly executed way of showing their concern as them not caring. And so that just kind of like fueled the cycle of shutting down, misunderstanding, Jimmy not feeling like he can be open about what he's doing and who he's hanging out with.
Yeah, I was thinking about that too, how Jimmy would leave and he thought that that was communicating to them, hey, I don't feel wanted when I'm home, but nobody got that message. And so it was what he was trying to tell them just wasn't clear. It was a crucial bit of information that I think it would have changed the way that the family responded, but it really just wasn't clear. So I think that was a step in the right direction to clarify and help the family understand, how they were all feeling and what they meant when they acted in certain ways.
I feel like to, in that process, trying to figure that out and watching the therapist kind of dissect all of that and trying to get a good feel for understanding the why behind the things. I think it was really cool how they were able to come around to that knowledge. And, I think, I don't know if it's in there or not, but like the mom being like, I didn't know, I had no idea that, and then she kind of realized like, I would figure that, me yelling at, Jimmy isn't really effective, but I feel like it's the only way to get my point across or, whatever. And I just found that interesting because I've known other people who do that same thing where, I think that the most effective way to do it is if they really get in your face or if they, yell at you or whatever, you're like, oh, you got my attention type of thing. When really, how does that make that person feel, like how they're receiving it, And so just that, I just feel like not the unclear or not being clear enough with each other, but having the therapist being able to recognize that in everybody and how they were seeing the situation, I think was a huge step of progress to be able to, end on, and then to be able to come back and to revisit that and to think. And now I think at this point, going forward, they can say, oh my gosh, like this is something that was pointed out to me. How many other things am I doing that are, making my, my daughter Maddie, making her feel this way? Or, I say this, I'm really stressed, but I don't mean it that I'm like angry. It's just, or whatever, it may be. So I think that was just a small thing, but really insightful for them to be like, oh, wow, like that's, what else am I doing that isn't clear enough? Or what am I misunderstanding about a situation that's tough?
Yeah. I kind of have like mixed feelings about like how much Jimmy actually was taking in, because in some ways it seemed like he kind of understood why his parents and his sister felt worried, but at the same time, it kind of, I feel like throughout he kind of gave off the impression that not that he didn't care, but like that he wasn't really willing to do anything differently to kind of assuage their fears.
Mhm. I think he felt a little bit aloof through the entire thing. Like he was there, but he wasn't really a willing participant. But I feel like that's just kind of typical from a teenage boy. And maybe
Yeah.
he was taking in and listening more than it appeared.
Yeah, you're probably right.
I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, because the dad kind of felt the same way too, but then they would say things that I'd be like, oh, okay, so you are listening. Like, I don't know. That's just my own take on it.
No, yeah, I thought the same thing. It's actually interesting that we're having this actually happen today to me. So it's very small, I promise, but I work at a counseling office. I think I already shared that with Madison, but work at a counseling office, and every month they do like a lunch where they get together with all the therapists and they talk about different cases that they have with different clients and stuff. And I get to I asked to be able to join in just because I'm in the major that I am and I want to become who they are. And so anyways, today they're talking about something really interesting. They're talking about the situation where it's just a really hard situation and like none of them could even come up with a solution. And I was like, wow, you guys are all like professionals. Like, what's going on? In my mind, I was thinking that. And then after that, they kind of came to the conclusion, all three of them, they were all just talking and they said, like at the end of the day, a real job of, how it says in here, like a therapist or whoever it is that they're working with, that professional, they're there to provide tools and in different ways and solutions to give to the family or the individual or the couple. But really it's up to them to make that choice to change. They're not there to change them. They just provide them with the skills and the tools to be able to know how to change for themselves, because they can't make them change. And so that's not their responsibility. They just do what they can do, and then they just let them flourish if they choose to have that happen, And so with Jimmy, I feel like, and with, with his sister too. And I don't know, maybe the parents as well. I don't know if they've been to therapy or whatever before, but sometimes I feel like whether it's in a therapy setting or at church or at school or whatever, we have the option to choose, whatever we're given to be able to act upon that's going to benefit us in the long run. And so maybe the information that Jimmy was, because I thought the same thing, Madison, like I was like, is he really understanding this? Like he just seems kind of like he doesn't care. But then I thought, kind of like with that same thought that I was mentioning about what I was able to experience today, the therapist was just able to recognize things within the family. And of course they really care and they want to push for that progress in the family. But I think that it's, as long as they're able to voice and to point things out that are necessary, then it's ultimately up to them to be like, okay, well, I recognize this in myself. How can I change but really it's like their choice to do that, you know. So thought that was kind of interesting. So
Yeah, I also want to go into therapy, marriage and family therapy. And I've been to like individual counseling myself, and it is kind of frustrating in a way of like knowing that as the patient that like this person is not going to like change me or tell me all the answers, and then as the counselor, the therapist, to know like I can't force them to do anything. I can't force them to actually like use any principle I teach or like to even care about what I'm saying. And so I think the therapist in this did a really good job of just making sure that he was understanding what they were saying and like keeping them engaged. So yeah, I thought that was a really cool thing. Not that that has anything to do with what we're talking about overall, but I just thought that was a really cool choice.
I noticed, sorry to keep going that.
Oh no,
No, you're good. I noticed that, and and I think I'm probably the only one in this, but like it was kind of bugging me how often he was like, "No, correct me if I'm wrong," or "Am I understand?" Like he just kept saying that, and I was like, "What?" And so then I was like, "Oh my gosh, keep saying that," but like I understand why he was doing it, but I was just like, "Oh my gosh, this is like every response, you know, every response he was getting." But he really just needed to understand the situation, and so I understood why. But I was like, ugh. But I almost kind of think he did that in a way that maybe, you know, he already understood the situation, but maybe that was also for their understanding as well. And that for them to even, you know, discover, oh, so you're feeling this way because of this. Am I feeling that? You know, like, oh yeah, I am. You know, and so then it kind of points out their emotions and their feelings, and they're like, oh yeah, this is how I'm feeling. You're right. Like, oh, okay, yeah, I just wanted to make sure. Okay, got it. Like it was just kind of like a cool way for him to be able to do that.
So I'm a parent advocate, which is not a therapist, but kind of, I don't know, similar in some ways. And that's one thing that we're taught at work is that like anytime you're going to summarize what somebody else says, you have to kind of put it in a way that like I might not understand, or tell me if this is what I'm hearing, or something to that effect. And also, like if you are correcting somebody, we're supposed to always say, I believe, or I think, and not just be like, okay, so this is what you're actually trying to say. Like, so yeah, like I didn't even pick up that he was doing that because I do it all day
You do
long.
all the time. Yeah.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, that kind of like fits in with something else I noticed of like towards the end of the session, how he was really focused on not just helping the family understand each other better, but like what is our next step? Like he had the parents make a date to talk about how they can help Jimmy and how they, I think also like how they can understand each other better. And then he also talked about like Jimmy and the dad connecting over something like not even related to the issue, just like helping Jimmy make that transition, which I thought was really a really good idea.
Mm-hmm. So I feel like we've talked about a lot of things that they were doing wrong or things they weren't doing well, which is honestly, when I watched it, I only made note of things that they weren't doing well. So I'm curious if anybody like saw anything that was in this chapter and they're like, oh, they did a good job of this, or they, I don't know, other than that they were doing better toward the end of the session.
I have a thought because I thought the same thing. I was like, okay, well, but one thing that I thought was really, I mean, it's very small, but I think that they were very honest. I think the mom was very honest in how she felt. She wasn't going to hold back. And I don't know if that, I can't remember if I read that in here or not, or if I read that somewhere else, but the only way that really a therapist can really do much in that situation is to be able to, you know, have honesty from, you know, everybody. And so even though at first it kind of seemed like not like awkward, but just kind of like, oh, there it is, like elephant in the room. Oh, here it is. And she was able to be honest with the therapist. And even I think like Maddie, you know, she was kind of like, yeah, well, you do this. Da, da, da. And so I thought that was interesting, but I'm glad that they were able to do that because, you know, he was able to understand the situation more with their honest comments about, you know, this is what we're feeling and,
Yeah.
you know, why is he doing this, you know, type of thing. So,
Thanks, Mackenzie.
you know.
Another thing that I noticed was one of the first things that they pointed out was that they were all making the choices that they were because they cared about each other. Jimmy, he cared about his family. He didn't feel loved by his family, so he was leaving, kind of like avoiding those negative feelings. The mom and the sister, they were getting after him because they cared about him. They were worried about him. The dad was worried about him. So something that a positive thing was they all emphasized that they care about each other and they're just worried. So
Yeah, I like that.
Okay, and then I honestly stopped on my notes, like where it starts talking about the models and the mapping and things like that, because I didn't really feel like anything. Well, first of all, I don't feel like I completely understood the second half of this chapter. And then also I didn't feel like it was super relevant. Did anybody address anything after like page 109?
Not really, no.
Okay.
Yeah. Kind of going back to like what they were doing right. I think the fact that they all came to the session, whether willingly or unwillingly, it still kind of showed a desire to be more connected as a family, like kind of like what Maddie and Jimmy said of like how they want to reconnect with one another, and the parents, they want to reconnect with Jimmy and like get to know him better, like figure out what makes him tick, kind of. And so I think, I mean, desire is the first step. Obviously you have to actually act on it, but I think that desire kind of turned into like they're going to actually act on what they talked about.
Okay. Are you guys okay if I share my screen? And this is all super jumbled right now. I'm kind of trying to like straighten it in to make more sense. But maybe you guys can help me look and see if there's anything I left out or anything you think I put incorrectly, or maybe just help me make sense of where we're at.
Let's see if I have.
Oh, it says I can't share my screen. Maybe not.
Let me see. I'm trying to figure out how to enable you to be able to do it.
If not, I can put it in a Google Doc and share it that way. I purposely did it in Word because he said he wanted it submitted in Word, but I could copy and paste it.
Okay. Let's try it now, see if you can share it.
Okay.
Okay.
So can you guys all see that?
Mhm.
It ended up being longer. I guess it's just one page, so that's fine.
That's really good. Way to go. That was very, like, very well done. Good job, Carly.
I feel like I'm kind of jumping back and forth between like the therapist did this and the family was doing this. I would like to put one paragraph with like our observations of what the family did, good or bad, and then a separate paragraph with what the therapist did. Do you guys agree with that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And while you do that, you don't have to add my comment to this, but I just saw something that I could share. And is it an hour or is it 45 minutes? know?
It's supposed to be about an hour.
Okay. So we have like a couple minutes. So there's a part at the very end. It just made me think of one of the things that the therapist said. And it says, families understand their life situations better than outside experts do. Yet, due to heightened distress and focus on immediate problems, they may not see connections to various stressors in their lives. Practitioners should inquire routinely about recent and anticipated changes in events, families' approach and response. And I thought that it was really good how he was able to recognize and kind of remind them, you know, hey, like I'm not there all the time. I'm not going to be there all the time. You guys know yourselves way better. I mean, I just got to know you in 45 minutes. But I think it's important that you understand that, you know, what happens today is just like the step that you guys are taking in the right direction to be able to help each other to learn more about each other and your feelings and emotions and how you can kind of grow as a family unit and structure. And so I think that a lot of times when like how, you know, with the evidence that the family didn't know, you know, like they didn't know a lot of things about the information about the other. So that's what led them to therapy. Just like that, a therapist can be left in the dark and kind of like not understand the situation if there's like things that change or happen or whatever. And so I think that, you know, being able to be proactive, and I don't know if he was meaning to do this on purpose, but I feel like if I were to be told that and to be able to receive that, I think that it would be more of a conscious choice and conscious, I don't know what the word is, like a being able to, when a situation happens, you know, being like, okay, you know, this is what we talked about in therapy. How can we go about doing this as a family, and how can we, you know, apply the things that he's told us or taught us to be able to, because, you know, ultimately a therapist is there to guide you, and he's not there to be, you know, for you to be reliant on. And so I think that being able to do that, and I think that he was very honest and really did a good job of doing that. And I also really appreciated that he what was it? Oh, when he said, this is aside from that, when he said, like he was talking about a point and then he was asking questions and he said, let me come back to that. And then he would like go to something else and then he would revisit that. I think that was really cool because it was almost kind of like a cliffhanger. And I was like, oh, like I wonder how they're going to solve this, or I wonder how this is going to happen. And I think it also leaves that individual, whoever it is, to kind of be thinking like, you know, what are we going to be diving into more? I don't know. I'm just glad that he was able to, you know, be able to do that in a setting where all of them were all there, and so they were able to kind of know what he was trying to get at, and then, you know, being like, okay, like this is the process. You know, if I go, we need to kind of split things up, so it's not like we need to go through this. We can stop here and then, you know, visit here. You know, how are you feeling about this? Okay, let's stop there. How does Maddie feel about this, or how does Dad? Okay, so you two feel this way. Okay, so then all together, kind of forming the pieces of the puzzle all together, and not expected to form or, you know, complete it in that one session, but kind of get the ground work to everything that they're going through. So
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, I'm definitely working on like not letting my mind wander, because it'd be kind of the worst if I did that while I was with the client.
Yeah.
it's funny. There's actually a therapist that I work for, and she was talking about, because they offer both in person and like virtual sessions.
Hmm.
And so she talks about how like at like the 2 or 3 o'clock time when it's like really like you start to get really tired.
Yes.
She had a client, and her client is a little bit older, and older women just like to talk and to ramble. And so it wasn't like that, like, even if she probably did fall asleep, I don't think she would notice. But like it was just so funny because she was like, I felt so bad because my eyes started to close and I didn't know how long my eyes were closed. And
Oh
so
no.
she kind of like, she didn't lose track because it was about like the same thing she talks about every time. But it was just funny because she was like, thank heavens it was anybody else that it was like a tough situation that I really needed to be focused on. But
Oh man.
it happens. It happens, I'm sure.
Yeah, my
Mhm.
mom, she got really mad at this therapist. She only saw him the one time, but
Uh-huh.
he basically was like falling asleep the whole time and like barely asked her any questions or anything.
Oh no,
Yeah.
terrible.
Yeah, my mom's not the sort of person that like accepts when people do that sort of thing. And so
Uh-huh.
she's just like, I can't, she said something super snarky to him at the end. Because she was just like, that this was a waste of an hour.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. I don't know how much, like, you guys can't see the whole document here, right?
Right.
Okay. Let's just start with the first paragraph, and if you can read it and let me know if there's anything you want me to change. It's probably still really choppy.
Just going off what's on the screen, it looks good to me. I think it's a little choppy, but I mean, it's a quick summary. I think it does the job. So
Okay. Do you want to go ahead and look at the second paragraph, or do you want to just assume it's good? I'm gonna move it down. in case you want to.
whatever.
When it says the therapist did a really good job of helping the family build a plan to make sure, I would change it to make sure that they understood how their actions are affecting the family as a whole.
Okay, say that again.
In the sentence, the
Mhm.
therapist did a really good job of helping the family build a plan. I would change it to, so build a plan to make sure that they understood how their actions are affecting the family as a whole. Yeah, but
I'm
other
gonna
than
change.
that, it's good.
Sorry, go ahead.
I think it looks good other than that.
Okay, I'm gonna change build a plan to take a proactive approach, just because then we're using language from the document.
Question. The last sentence. We felt that the therapist's suggestion to start small with building relationships and communication by spending time in smaller groups.
So I was trying to get there and I like just typed
It's
really
okay.
quick. When
No,
he
it's
was saying
okay.
like the two kids go out together, mom and dad go out together, dad and Jimmy,
Yes.
like, and then he gave them like, we're not gonna talk about the problem, we're gonna talk about, you know, your senior year, or we're gonna talk about careers or whatever.
Yes. Yes.
You guys have any ideas of how I could write that more effectively? Oh, it's not even a complete sentence. Oh gosh.
No, it's okay. Hey, you're writing fast. It's okay. I'm trying to even think like how to word that. Really about the therapist suggestion to spend time with there's a word I'm looking for. Suggestion. What's a different word for suggestion? It wasn't a suggestion because they're doing it. So
Right.
they're acting on the suggestion. So that's a, what is that word? There's a word.
Maybe like a proposal, because he's
Yeah.
I don't know, he suggested it and then they move forward. I don't know.
I think so.
Yeah, I think that sounds good.
Okay.
I hate it when I can't think of the word.
Yes. Yes, I know. It bugs me all the time, and I can't pronounce words and I can't think of words. And so my husband is very good at that. So I call him, I say that he's my words. That's why we're married, is because he's my words that I can't say. I say it all the time. Okay, sorry, one more thing. With building relationships and communication by spending time. Why does that make sense? Why does that not make sense to me? We felt that the therapist's proposal to start small with building relationships and communication by spending time. Can you change it to through?
Yes.
Or is that not right?
I think that sounds good.
Spending time in smaller. I think
I don't like smaller groups.
I don't know. Yeah. You're spending time discussing
Maybe spending time one-on-one with specific things to discuss.
I think
Um,
101 is a good phrase.
Can you change it to discuss was an effective start to collaborate instead of collaborative? On, collaborate on. Right? Guys, if I'm not saying this right, just tell me. Collaborate on problem solving and building.
I think that sounds good.
Okay, so are we good with this?
Yes.
All right. Do you want, I don't know, like, do we submit the document and the video, the recording separately, or I can't even remember from last time?
I think the same person submits both of them. So
Yes.
like they
Okay.
get submitted together.
So if you can just email me the document.
I will do that.
Awesome.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone.
All right. Thank you.